this rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.
Welcome to Get It Right, Texoma. How is everybody? I'm Mike Hendren. This is Terry McAdams, Trey Serrala, and our very special guest on this program is Austin Cobb.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we today?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing great.
Be careful on the gentleman thing. I mean, you got to wonder what company you're in here.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm respecting my elders.
Cool. All right, guys. Show. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Wow. I knew I looked like hell, but come on.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, this program being brought to you in part by Eddie Hill's Fun Cycles of 401 North Scott, downtown Wichita Falls since 1966. Get them online at eddieHillsFunCycles.com.
For all your power sports needs in Texoma.
Exactly. MacTech Solutions, 4020 Ray Road, Suite 3B, Wichita Falls, MacTech-Solutions.com. Texoma's only place for Apple authorized service as far as I'm concerned, baby. This is it right here.
And you don't have to
seriously.
put up with some goofy kid in khakis and a man bun. And 15 bracelets. What the hell is it with guys wearing these bracelets?
I don't know.
I'm not a fan of this dudes wearing these. You see a guy running around with a man bun and 15 like leather bracelets on.
Yeah,
It's like
friendship bracelets.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what those are?
That's
yeah. We did that. We did that in like fourth grade, didn't we?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever did, but I didn't have any friends. So anyway, also brought to you by Lolly and Pop Sweet Shop, lpsweet.com, and on Facebook as well, Lolly, Lollie, and Pop's Sweet Shop on Facebook, and again, lpsweet.com. So, Austin, you are a candidate for city council are you at large?
Yep, city council at large. So, citywide election for council representative.
So, the city of Wichita Falls has 5 council districts.
That's right, 1 through 5.
Plus the at-large position and then the mayor position.
And the mayor, that's correct, yep.
So
they alternate which ones are up. We just had a mayoral election last year in 2 council seats. This one will
feels like it was last week, yeah.
It does. So, this one will be council at large, and then I think District 1 and District 2 are both up as well. So, council at large, Bobby Whiteley is termed out after this term, and so I've thrown my hat in the ring.
Well, so I'll ask the obvious question. How did you lose your mind and decide to get into politics?
Funny story. It's something I've always wanted to do. Since I was a little kid, I've wanted to serve Wichita Falls. We left for a while. We came back and immediately started getting back in the fray, and it just kind of came up. And I said, hey, you know what? It's what I want to do. I have a history. My family's given back so much to this community, and I was like, I want to serve on city council. So District 3 is where I live, but Jeff just ran for re-election, and so that was 3 years out, and I didn't want to wait that long. So I threw my hat in at large. So it's a big race, and it's citywide. So
I will tell you, Bobby has been one of the more, in my opinion, one of the most stalwarts of common sense in a long time.
100%.
On the city council.
I have
Bobby's
to
done
agree
a
with
really good job.
He does a good job. He does. And we've had lunch several times, and trying to pick his brain and learn as much as I can from him. But you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head right there.
But they have term limits, like everybody should have.
Right.
Every elected position should have term limits.
That's correct.
Yes, they should. And
if you levy taxes or make laws or ordinances, you should have term limits.
Yeah. Well, I'm so looking forward to having congressional term limits.
Yeah.
We will one day. It will happen.
You think.
It will happen.
Yeah.
But heck, they get to trade inside stocks and make tons of money, and
amazing.
It's going to have to give them. I hope they can get term limits in there sometime.
If it's good enough for our president and it's good enough for our city council, it should be good enough for the U.S. Congress as far as I'm concerned.
You'd think.
But anyway, that's a whole other topic in itself right there. But so what do you see as some of the critical things for the city of Wichita Falls? I know we've had this conversation with the mayor, and we've had this conversation in the past with other council members, but what's your take on what's the most critical things for the city moving forward? Obviously, population growth is something that everybody looks at.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have to grow at some point.
Yeah.
If we don't grow in the next 5 years, I don't think we'll ever grow. We've got some stuff, I've heard rumors of stuff coming, and I think it's just a critical point in our city. We're either going to go right or left, and we got to pick, the right way to go. Growth, but, I'm kind of running on, I've just been saying responsible growth, right? I've had the ability to live in different cities where they just kind of grew it no matter the cost. And it really, their city changed. I don't want Wichita Falls to change. I moved back to raise my family here.
Yeah.
I want Wichita Falls to stay the same. But, a 10% population growth is 10,000 people. We can handle that. We can handle probably even a little more than that. And our population is aging. A lot of these taxes in the next 10, 15, 20 years are going to be frozen. And if we don't grow and get some new people here, young people that make a good living, Wichita Falls can be in real trouble.
Well, that and Sheppard Air Force Base, as much as we love having Sheppard here,
Yep.
That'd be a huge hit if they did decide to close. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I think in the foreseeable future anyway, there's no reason to think that they're going to close because they've consolidated down to fewer bases. I got here in 95 with the Air Force, and they had just closed Lowry Air Force Base a few years prior to that, and Chanute up in Illinois, and those consolidated into the other bases, and there were even some others. So there was a lot of consolidation going on, but still, I don't like the idea of having to depend on one employer like them, and I'm retired and I really don't use the base services a lot, but the fact that they're here. So I'd like to hear, what do you think about Sheppard?
Well, it's 34% of our economy.
Yeah, that's scary.
that is,
to me, it's scary.
100%. When you rely that much on one industry to supply, economic dollars to your community,
I didn't realize it was that much.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Thankfully, I think the NJET program was just extended. I think to 2036 is their expiration date. But I think Wichita Falls city leaders have been a little too reactive to Sheppard in the past, and we need to be a little more proactive. I think it's time that we look at the military 10, 15, 20 years in the future. Yeah. It's all going drone. It's all going unmanned missions. I would love for Sheppard to get an additional mission because military dollars are real quick.
Yeah.
When we get a program, it doesn't take, a 2-3 year build out process. It's usually within several months.
Yeah.
They move pretty quick when it comes to those things. We've got that DC based consultant, a group of elected officials just went to DC recently. I think that's a proactive approach, and I think we need to continue that. That puts us at the table with military leaders in DC that are making decisions for military installations around the world.
I know we talk about
States.
We talk a lot about long-term planning, and you look at 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years out, but there's a limit. The fact of the matter is that no one sitting at this table is going to be in charge of anything in 50 years.
Right.
Some of us won't even be here in 50 years.
Right.
And so we're not going to have any control over where we are then. So it's kind of hard to really plan beyond that because you don't know where society's going to be. You don't know where your economy's going to be. Things can and in the last, I think personally in the last 25 years, things have morphed and changed more quickly in our economy and our society than at any point ever in human history. I think we've seen more changes more rapidly in the last quarter century than any other time in human history.
At least in some areas, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, so I think it's impossible to plan too far out, but we do need to look, 5, 10, 15 years out.
Right.
What do you think we can do? I know I've got my own ideas, and I've heard lots of other people's ideas about what we could do, but in looking beyond Sheppard Air Force Base and looking outside that box,
right,
what we can do to diversify our economy. And what we can, what can we do to create more opportunity here for the people that are here and the people that potentially will move here and live here beyond Sheppard Air Force Base?
Yeah, I think the city and the Chamber of Commerce need a one direction, one plan. We've got a new chamber CEO, Ron Kitchens. He was on your show. I think he's great. The meetings I've had with him, he always says, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. We need a uniform message. The city needs to help the chamber get the tools they need so they can go out and recruit. We have to outwork the competition, right? They're not going to pick Wichita Falls just to pick Wichita Falls.
Right.
We don't have the luxuries like Frisco and Denton. I don't want to be Frisco or Denton. But
don't want to live in that mess.
No, absolutely not. But we've got to go out and have a uniform message between the city and the chamber, and we have to outwork our competition and make them, see that Wichita Falls is best for the business and best for our community.
Well, you talked about 10% population growth, about 10,000 people, give or take, and I've been saying for a long time, a population of 120, 125,000 for Wichita Falls. I think that's an attainable number. I think it's a realistic number.
Well, with plenty of land
and plenty of space.
Plenty of space.
Yeah, we've got the infrastructure, I think, already in place to handle it. We've got the space, as Trey said. We've got the land. We've got the growth, but the room to grow.
Right.
And I think that's a realistic and attainable growth number to reach over a period of time.
Well, even if you think about it, I've talked about it on this show before, is just take 1% of 100,000.
Yeah.
That's 1,000 people. I mean, we've not seen any, except when Sheppard got here and maybe a little bit of here and there, but we haven't seen that kind of growth at any time.
We hit 110,000 back in the early 60s sometime, and that was due to Sheppard.
From 1950. At 1950, Wichita Falls was 150,000, or was 50,000 people. In 1960, it was about 100,000. That was the growth. That's when it doubled.
We doubled,
size.
and we've hovered somewhere right around
there.
that 100,000 number for decades now.
Yep.
Since 1960.
We've been as low, I think, in the 80s as about 90,000, 89, 90,000.
I don't think we're that low. I think we're in the mid 90s.
Maybe 96,000. I know there's it's real funny. If you go to, it was there, maybe it still is. At Market Street United here in Wichita Falls on Kell Boulevard, there's a mural on the wall. When you walk into their dining area, there's a big mural on the wall. And it's a street scene from, just based on the cars, I'm going to say late 40s, early 50s. And I think the population sign says 86,000 or 88,000 or something.
It would have been
like
in
that.
the 60s then.
And it's, I mean, it's a, you look at that and go, okay, in basically 6 decades, we haven't grown much at all.
Not at all.
And I think part of that is, part of that I put on city leadership. Part of that I put on the city, on the civilians, on the citizens of the city. I think there was a desire for a long time and an effort to not grow.
Right.
And at some point, I think you have to realize. You talked about our aging population. And I used to do a show regularly, a public affairs show with Henry Florsham, the former chamber president. And we talked about this a lot, about how the only demographic here that was growing and had been growing for years was 55 plus.
Right. Great retirement community.
This is, which is wonderful.
Great,
it's great. But that's not going to pay the bills forever.
No,
here's the problem with that. Those people are going to die.
Yep.
Okay, I'm in that 50-plus crowd.
Right.
Okay, he is.
Right.
We're at that point now, and don't take this the wrong way, guys. Don't hit me. But we are at that point of life where we got more years behind us than we do ahead of us.
100%.
That's just a
and taxes
fact.
get frozen too at a certain age too, and so you're not bringing in any additional. And we know the cost of everything just keeps going up and up and up and up.
I hope my grandchildren will, because they live in the area now, and I hope they'll stay in the area. But there's no guarantee they're going to.
100%.
And what's going to keep them here? It's going to be jobs. It's going to be income. It's going to be economy. It's going to be opportunity. That's what's going to keep them here or drive them out.
100%.
One or the other.
Right.
So,
I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, go ahead, finish up your thought.
No, I was
there.
just going to say, we have to grow. We have to have opportunities for our youth. I mean, I'm a perfect example of that. I was born here, raised here, played sports here, went to Franklin Bar-wise, Old High Midwestern State, and I left. Left for opportunity. I came back. But we've got to create more opportunities for our young people. We have to have real businesses, real industry come in. I mean, we've got 3 or 4 really good industries here, the ones that have been here forever. But we've got to grow, and we have to grow the right way. I think we're doing some good things, right? The Career and Technology Center for the school system, I think, is a fantastic, fantastic thing.
You're welcome.
You're seeing a huge
it's a nice
transition of
thing.
people going to college and people going into trade schools. You get this old population of plumbers, electricians, trades, and there's going to be a real need for that. That's a ripe
Because
opportunity.
fewer people kids have been going into that because
Correct.
for a lot of reasons, but that's
Well,
things like that where they can. You can earn a good living being a plumber.
Oh, hell
I mean,
yeah.
great living.
Yeah.
And expanding on
a skilled
stuff like,
tradesman.
Yes.
People don't realize how good a living a skilled tradesman can learn.
No,
and
absolutely not.
you could either work for somebody or you can own your own business.
Correct.
So there's a lot of opportunities there.
Well, I think 30 plus years ago, the mentality was And I think, I know I had a school counselor that had this attitude. The attitude was, if you don't go to college, you're never going to be worth anything. You're never going to make a good living. You're not going to be able to advance in life. You're never going to go anywhere unless you get a college education.
Correct. Yeah.
And then what we did is we basically we eliminated people from the trades,
right.
Electricians, plumbers, auto mechanics, framers, roofers, concrete men. We all the building trades. We just ran everybody away from that and scared them away from it. Then all of a sudden, here we are now in the 2000s, and we've got a labor shortage.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how many people because I'm a real estate agent, how many people in the building trades that I've talked to in the last 3 or 4 years that tell me we can't hire enough people. I need more drywall people. I need more framers. I need more guys that know how to butter the bricks and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
They just can't find enough help. And that's because we drove people away from those trades for so long. And it turns out, well, you can actually make a pretty damn good living.
That was the federal government and the state of Texas, by the way.
Yeah.
State legislature did that.
Yeah.
They took a cue from the federal government. Yeah. So talking about moving forward, looking forward, okay, something that is hot in the news right now is Lake Ringgold.
Yep.
So give us your thoughts on Lake Ringgold.
Yep. Well, how much time you got? No, I'm just kidding. No, okay. Let's talk about Lake Ringgold.
Yeah, 7 minutes.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
I'm kidding.
Lake Ringgold. So I'm the chair of the Lake Wichita Revitalization Committee.
Okay.
I've been on that for a long time, so I'm pretty well versed in lake to more than probably the average citizen. So Lake Ringgold is a huge project and it's a lot of money. So it was recently approved by the TQEC. Or TCEQ. Yeah, there we go. All these acronyms. And then I'm in oil and gas too, so you should see all the acronyms that are in my head. Oh, yeah. But that's one step in the process. They have to apply for the 404 permit. We had to do that for Lake Wichita. That was about a 2-year project for Lake Wichita. So it's years down the road. Charles Perry was here recently. I was able to speak to him. So he's the chair on water, agricultural, and rural affairs. So for those of you who don't know, he's represents half of Wichita Falls all the way out west through Lubbock, and he's the most powerful man in the state when it comes to water.
He's in the Senate, by the way.
This Texas Senate. That's correct.
Senate.
Correct. And so he's the most powerful guy in water. He represents half of Wichita Falls, so he's got a vested interest in our area. At least I hope he does. And I agree with his approach. There's new technologies coming. We should chase those. And I think Lake Ringgold, I think we should not let it die on the vine of inactivity, because it may be our best option. I don't know if we know that yet, but I think we should follow the steps with Lake Ringgold and keep at least keep it on the vine. We don't want to die on the vine of inactivity.
Well, I will tell you.
And I will just say one more thing about Lake Ringgold. Wichita Falls owns 100% of those water rights. There's 3 reservoirs left that can be built in the state of Texas. Lake Ringgold is one. I think it's the city's little, ace in the hole. But we've only got one shot, and we got to do it right. What I want to see happen is that we have water security forever. If Lake Ringgold involves that, we always have that reputation of, hey, water runs out in Wichita Falls. We have to make sure that is, no longer a concern.
So how do you square, if that's the case, how do you square the eminent domain thoughts?
Well, no one wants to take anybody's property.
Okay.
But
you feel like as a city councilor you could make that decision if you feel like you had to.
If I had to make the correct I'm going to get facts from multiple points of view.
Okay.
I'm going to be, I'm kind of a guy that'll dig my feet in, and I'll make the right decision I can, the best decision I can, I guess you could say. Are we at that stage where I'm like all for it to take people's property? I'm not there yet, because the facts aren't all there. Like I said, I think we should apply for the 404 permit and continue along that. I mean, it's a 2-year process. Mm-hmm. Who knows what happens in 2 years? Mm-hmm. Everyone in 2 years may be saying, we got to build that lake. We got to build it right now. From the governor all the way to local officials. Yeah. 2 years, there may be, we just mentioned technology changing rapidly, right? Yeah. There could be something that comes out. And Charles Perry is, he mentioned a bunch of technology that he couldn't really disclose, but the state's working on additional. Water is going to be, more coveted than oil. I see it every day. All my operators are running out of, frack water. They're reproducing it because they can't get enough water. So water's going to be gold very, very soon.
Austin Cobb is our guest. He is a candidate for Wichita Falls City Council at large position. Austin, there's a lot of misinformation out there, or a lot of information that's just not accurate about Lake Ringgold. I'm learning this now myself.
It's with everything.
One of the things is you talked about Wichita Falls owning 100% of the water rights.
That's correct.
And I've seen this churned through on social media a lot in the last few days since the TCEQ approval of the permit. The argument has been, well, Fort Worth's going to get half the water, or someone else is going to get 90% of the water. That's not correct, is it?
No, it's not. No, we own 100% of the water rights. Now, it doesn't mean we can't partner with a different community on that lake.
Yeah, right. but it's not. They can't come in and just take it.
Correct.
There would be some sort of compensation.
At this stage right now, this is a Wichita Falls project.
Correct.
Period. And there's some. I know the mayor talked about there's this grant money that's out there that we're going to be able to get from the state. That's going to finance a very large portion of this. Because one of my concerns early on was cost. The first time that I interviewed Russell Schreiber about this, probably a decade ago or more, we were talking about this on radio. And the cost of that lake was somewhere around $40 million. The last conversation we had about it, which was probably 6 or 8 months ago, we were at about $430 or $40 million. We know it's going to take 15 years minimum to build this lake. I mean, that because you've got hurdles you got to clear. You mentioned the 404 permit. You've got TCEQ, you got EPA, you've got all these 3 and 4 letter agencies that get in the mix, and then you've got environmental groups that potentially could sue to delay things for whatever reason. So there are hurdles that are going to have to be landowners. I mean, you've got hurdles that have to be cleared to do this. You don't just go out and dam off part of a river and go, okay, hey, we got a lake. It's not how that works.
Right.
There's a process, and it's going to take years to do it. So a lot, as you said, a lot can change, a lot can happen. But at this point, we're going to own 100% of this, and we're going to foot 100% of the bill.
That's correct.
And I think the reality is the longer you let this go, the bigger that price tag gets.
100%.
It ain't going to get cheaper.
Nope.
It's not. It's never going to come down in price. That price tag's just going to keep going up. That's an inevitable fact of what we're doing here. So if this is going to be, and I find it interesting that this is one of only 3 reservoirs in the Texas.
2 or 3 left
that can still be built.
That can still be built. Yep.
Yeah, that are within a watershed area that could supply. Another thing I've seen too is people say, well, why don't they dredge out Lake Wichita and let's use it? Well, Lake Wichita was never a deep water source anyway.
And no one offered to do it for free either.
Oh, come on.
Sheppard, they were going to train the CE folks out there.
Heard that
They'd come out.
times.
For years, people have been perpetuating that BS. And I actually personally endeavored a few years ago to go out and investigate that.
Right.
And I bet I talked to...
He was live. This is Mike Hendren live at Lake Wichita. Ding, 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 ding.
It wasn't nearly that dramatic, but thanks for I probably talked to 2 dozen individuals and companies and people that I was told, well, this person had a hand in saying, or this person said this or said that, or this company said they do this or that. I could not find one individual or group that would say, yes, we know for a fact that so-and-so or such and such was going to do this for free.
Right.
And I kept saying to everybody that was telling me this, I'm like, why would someone do this for free?
Right.
And by the way, if somebody would do it for free, why would the city say no?
That's
exactly.
what I've always said. Anyone on social media or I've said, talked to in the public, I'm like, well, I'm the chair of Lake Wichita. Who is that person who'll do it for free? Here's my cell phone number. Have them call me because it's going to make our job a lot easier. Because it is so difficult to dredge an existing reservoir. It's
tens of millions of dollars.
Yes,
to do it.
Well, you got to dry stuff. I mean, how long? There's no telling how long it would take to dry. A certain area. If you dammed off a piece of area, just think the logistics.
Where did Murphy's Hill come from?
It came from Lake Wichita.
But what was it?
It's when it was when the drought happened.
It was before the drought. It was before the drought. They dredged a little bit.
That was when I got here.
And cleaned some of it out. My father-in-law was on the Parks Board at that time.
Yeah, I thought it was
with Jack Murphy.
Yeah.
I was told a wet dredge is less expensive and easier to do than a dry dredge.
Well, that's called excavating, basically, and it's very expensive. But there's all kinds of new technologies. We Lake Wichita, it's going to be dredged. We have applied for a grant. It was one of the first acts Tim did as mayor, is send off this letter to the Corps of Engineers. We basically found this grant that it pays for EPA mess ups, basically. So when they did the Holiday Creek project, they killed the fish habitat.
Yep.
Well, this grant comes in to help rehabilitate that. We stumbled upon this grant kind of by accident. So we call the local Corps of Engineers office, which is in Tulsa, that represents our area. And so we, get this guy on the phone and we're like, hey, by chance, we found this grant. We're trying to see if we apply, or, it works for Lake Wichita. Have you ever heard of Lake Wichita? And I forget the guy's name, but he goes, yeah, I've heard of Lake Wichita. He's like, funny story. He's like, I got my master's from Midwestern and did my thesis on Lake Wichita.
Oh, wow.
I'd love to come down and speak to your group. And we were like, oh my gosh, is this going to happen?
Yeah.
So he did. He said, yeah, he thinks we apply. So we sent off that letter, but it's going to be for fiscal year 2025. So we should hear back sometime, hopefully this fall, that we meet the criteria, and then we'll start the process of a feasibility study. We've already done the 404 permit, so we're ready to go. We've already identified a property where it's going to take the spoils. It's probably going to be a 2 or 3, 4 phase project to get it all done. So we'll have to apply for this grant several times.
But Lake Wichita is probably it's a recreational lake,
100%,
as opposed to a water source for municipal water.
If it's
purposes.
10 feet deep from shoreline to shoreline, it's 100% filled. It's like 23, 24 days of water supply for the city of Wichita.
Well, it's full right now.
So let me ask you.
that's it.
Was Lake Wichita the water source in Wichita Falls?
Yeah, in the 1900s.
When it was first built?
Right.
I know the city was a lot smaller.
Yeah.
I'm just asking because I've
It
always
was
heard
at
that
one
idea.
point, yeah.
It originally was designed to be a water source.
It's like the second oldest lake in the state.
For the small, because they had like a 100-year cycle.
Yeah.
Aren't they supposed to be played out after 100 years?
Yep.
Because I think prior
We
to
hang on to everything in Wichita Falls for longer than 100 years.
forever.
Gee, you said you went to Old High?
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you're sitting in chairs that were there 100 years ago, probably.
I know.
Yeah, because I think prior to 1900, there were no reservoirs in Texas.
No.
There's one natural lake in the entire state, and that's Caddo Lake in East Texas. And beyond that, everybody everybody here had always relied on well water, flowing rivers or creeks.
Lots of creeks and streams.
That people build cisterns to collect rainwater, whatnot. But that's how you got your water.
Do you know there used to be an aqueduct running through town?
Yeah.
Yeah. All through the country club. There's a alleyway. It's just, Avondale all the way, Martin Plaza Park all the way down, and it followed Holiday Creek. It was an aqueduct at one point in the turn of the century.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of interesting things there. Well, Austin, look, aside from, Ringgold and all this other stuff, and we talked about Sheppard a little bit, but you running for city council at large position, if you had one or two,
I usually like to say 3. What's your top 3? What's your top 3 priorities?
What's your top 3? I mean, what would you say your dream priorities? If there's 2 or 3 things that you could definitely get done as a city councilor, could see through, what would those be?
Responsible growth. That's top of my list. 100%. We got to grow. We got to grow the right way. I don't want to just give money to any company that wants to come to town. It's got to be a fit for Wichita Falls.
Right.
It's got to make our community, better.
Got to make sense.
And it's got to make sense. I just don't want 4A and 4B just to give money to anybody that's willing to take it. Like, I don't think if we can wait another year and a half to get the right company instead of giving it right now to some company just to grow for the sake of growing, I don't want to do that. We've got to grow the right way.
So I guess you think economic development dollars are a good
100%,
thing.
100%. They're great. I just want to use them wisely. I mean, we all pay it. I don't want to hand it out to anybody that wants to come. How many times have we seen businesses come that get money and then they're shuttered within a year?
Yeah.
And then it's just, all right, well, that was a waste of everybody's time. And
That's all funded by sales tax dollars.
Correct.
100%.
100%. Yeah. And then, I want our city safe and secure. That's first responders, things of that nature. I've been touring some of the fire facilities, and some of them are very inadequate. All that stuff is very expensive. Our police and fire are both understaffed currently. If we grow 10%, they're understaffed for different reasons, right? You've got Denton Fire Department, Denton Fire Department putting up billboards, coming here and recruiting our active duty firefighters and getting them out of here. We got to stop. Those are expensive decisions. I realize that, and part of the security is also water. I just want our water to be secured permanently. That way, Sheppard's never, at risk. Our town's never at risk. We've
Some
got
of the factories. I mean, because you think of Virtotech or certainty, and also it used to be PPG, whatever PPGs.
Yeah.
They rely a lot on water.
100%.
Vitro now.
And
Vitro,
the thing I hate about the state of Texas is, there's so many water districts and muds. And when I lived in Houston, I paid my water tax and bill to somebody else different than my neighbor across the street did. And we're all on different water. There's no interconnected water systems. We're just kind of on this little desert island with water. And if we run out, we run out.
Representative Frank Representative Frank has talked about that quite a bit.
100%. I mean, he's
connected water system in Texas.
We have to secure it, whether it's, having a partnership with Fort Worth or Oklahoma and the Indian tribes, anybody. If we build Lake Ringgold, for example, and all 3 lakes are at 0%, there's some water, pipeline or something coming to the city of Wichita Falls that it never runs out. And then lastly, I just want we need opportunity for our young people. We have to stay. I brought my family here to raise, and I'm getting my feet wet and feet dirty, and I want, opportunities for our kids to stay and grow. I mean, right now, every time we build a new Starbucks, that's great, but, we need something that pays people well to stay here, that they have a vested interest in our community. Those are probably the 3 top things that if I could wave a magic wand, I'd do them tomorrow.
Well, I've got one particular question about that I've always asked every opportunity I have about, as far as growth. You want to facilitate that growth. You want to show these new people that are potential residents of Wichita Falls that if they're going to invest their money in their businesses and everything else here, that it's we've got a business-friendly city with regard to construction and build-outs and things like that. We've talked about that many times with the mayor and a few others that the perception is that that the city inspection group, I think he had an idea about a foreman or something, about somebody in charge of customer service. That because we don't measure, there's no part of government that I'm aware of, our city government that is measured based on customer service.
Right. No, I've heard that concern from a lot of people. I've met with home builders. I've met with electricians and I hear that same kind of sentiment. I think a lot of it boils down to communication, and that is what,
a huge part of it.
I hate it. And especially in what I do for a living, it's, if you don't have communication, it's just everyone starts pointing fingers and blaming. I will say that, other cities have some issues like this.
Sure.
But it's got to change, like, for example, I heard a story about, hey, we weren't in, state code came down, and I forget which trade it was, but I was talking to a guy, and he said, hey, the city inspection department wasn't enforcing this. But all of a sudden they show up on a Tuesday, and now they're enforcing it. A simple, email. I mean, they have all these guys' phone numbers, right? We don't have any KB home builders, huge corporations that are in here. They're all, most of these guys are all local people. You have everyone's cell phone and email. A simple email or text like, hey, starting on May 1st, we will be enforcing this code. It's not like they didn't do it on purpose. They didn't break code on purpose and try to get away with it. It wasn't enforced. Communication goes a long way.
Well, it's a huge amount of it. It's all communication, because you have to think about it. The people that work for the city of Wichita Falls, now there's some assholes, everywhere.
No, they're good people.
But 99% of the people that work for the city of Wichita Falls are good people that want to do a good job and do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And they want to follow guidelines, ordinances, and laws. But like you said, that's where the breakdown is communication. And when you don't enforce something, then all of a sudden we didn't do it on Thursday and Friday we're doing it.
Right. Well,
and
but
it's
where the rubber meets the road on this is with the city manager's office. The city manager is in charge of all these people.
That's correct.
The city manager's office, in my opinion, needs to sit down with all of these different agencies within city government, get everybody on the same page, get everybody communicating. And anybody that doesn't want to play on the team,
right?
Well, we will happily accept your resignation.
Yep.
Well, we
agree.
Adopt the Sorrel plan.
We have to. We in our businesses, and especially in retail.
Yep.
We have to go, if we want our businesses to be cared about and being local, we have to delight our customers.
100%.
Right.
And what is the incentive for the city employees to delight their customers?
Yeah.
And are we really called customers? Is that even if we're not technically customers, we're just constituents or whatever it is. We need to, I just think there we need a mind shift
I
on
agree.
all of that.
We agree. You know, I think instead of giving high fives when you deny a permit, you should be giving high fives when you approve permits. Like, hey, we approved 50
Yeah,
permit here.
exactly.
Certificates of occupancy this week. That's where we say mindset change.
Yep.
That's where that mindset has to change. It's like, hey, you didn't meet code. You know, we're going to communicate with you how we do it, and you know,
Right.
it's
Take
it
it on
wastes
as a bit of
everybody
a
time,
right, and take it on as a bit of a failure. What I feel like to some extent, it's not totally because we have customers that just sometimes, but if it's
watch
my
your time
fault,
a little bit.
yeah,
Just-
no,
yeah.
but we have a responsibility to educate our customers,
right? 100%.
to an extent. Now, they have to accept it and understand it,
Correct.
but you have to, and I just feel like that's what the city needs to do is educate those folks who do that all the time,
Right.
and offer opportunities for people who want to get into it as a new customer, a new build out. Never done this before. I've never been in business, so. But anyway.
Austin Cobb has been our guest today on Get It Right Tech Selma. He's a candidate for Wichita Falls City Council at large position. Austin, obviously, you've got, I guess, a website, Facebook page. There's ways people can connect with you.
Facebook page. I've got cobbforwf.com. My cell phone number's on there. My email's on there. Call me. I've been meeting with everybody and anybody. So
And when
I
is
wanna hear
voting?
it. Voting is November 5th. So
Okay.
it's presidential ballot. So we'll be heading to the polls.
I know it feels like it's a long way away, but it's not.
It's not. It'll get here quick. You know, I launched in January, so we've been going. It'll be almost a
Well,
whole
an
year.
interesting thing about that is you're going to have a lot better turnout.
We
just
will.
simply because it's the timing. So that's
will.
interesting.
Absolutely.
Will.
Yeah, you might have 25% of the registered voters turn out as opposed to 10.
Yeah.
Who knows? A
It's a
lot of people just
shame.
go in and vote for president and walk right out. So.
I know.
And it starts local. Like locals, I feel is
We
way
beat
more.
that.
I've been screaming about that. I wrote a whole thing about it that it was in a national publication about local
Everything
government.
starts
It's,
local.
it's huge. Yes.
It really is. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up here?
Oh, thanks guys for having me. I enjoyed the conversation, and just remember in November.
Okay. And again, the website is
cobbforwf.com.
for WF.com. All right, guys. Austin Cobb, our guest. Thanks for being here, Austin. We appreciate
you.
it. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get It Right Tech Selma. Again, brought to you by Eddie Hills Fun Cycles at 401 North Scott, downtown Wichita Falls, EddieHillsFunCycles.com. MacTech Solutions. We record this podcast in the MacTech Solutions podcast studio at 4020 Ray Road, Suite 3B. They're open Monday through Friday from 6A to 10, or 6A to 10, 10A to 6P.
I'm not here at 6 a.m.
Get it right. 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and also brought to you by Lolly and Pop Sweet Shop, lpsweet.com, and on Facebook as well. So, guys, thank you for joining us. Take care. We will see you down the road.